Hey guys, this is Shane here from Echo Soundworks, and in this video, we're going to be doing a first look at Native Instruments Massive X. So I'm really excited to bring this video, partly because I've had my hands on this synth for a few months now, dating back to the sound design build and some of the beta versions, and I haven't been able to say anything, obviously NDAs, and I'm excited to finally share it with you. So in this video, we're going to go over all the new features, talk about some of the things that are highlight worthy, some of the coolest new features that are included in the synth, and just do a quick walkthrough. This video is not going to be a manual on how to use every feature in the synth. That would be a much longer video. So let's dive into this video and get started. All right, so the first big change that will be really evident and clear right when you look at the synth is the GUI, the graphical user interface. It's gotten a brand new interface. Nothing remains the same pretty much. And I'm happy to say that this GUI is scalable, meaning that it's not going to look like shit like so much of the other Native Instruments plugins do on 4K and 5K monitors. So it actually scales. You can go all the way from 50% all the way up to 200%, which is great. Now the GUI, the first time you look at it, you might think, oh, it's a little boring, a lot of grays, basically just grays. But once you use the synth, you'll kind of start to appreciate the gray tones of the background of the synth because the macros and the modulators, they really pop off of the screen, making them easy to locate and easy to see as you're interfacing with the interface. Now, I am a little unhappy personally with some elements of the GUI. For instance, the envelopes, they do not respond to what you're doing with the knobs, or actually you can't actually touch the envelope. So in my opinion, that's a step back from the first version of Massive, right? There's also not a lot of visual feedback with the synth. I was hoping Native Instruments would have taken it more like the Massive route, or where synths are just going in general, where you get visual feedback about what filters are doing, about what things are doing. The only visual feedback we actually get currently with the first release version is we can see wavetable positions move, but we can't see any of the other wavetable modes and how they affect the wavetable like we can in SERUM and some other wavetable synths. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but the GUI, in my opinion, has gotten a nice upgrade. I actually like it. All right, so now we're going to take a little bit of a deeper look into the oscillators and talk about some of the new features. So I love the oscillators. I think they're kind of the star of the show with Massive X. Massive X sounds great. It has a really nice sound. Let's check out some of the key features in the oscillators. All right, so I think the best way to showcase some of the features in the wavetables is to give you kind of a good news and then some bad news. So good news, you can actually see the wavetable and the wavetable position. Bad news, when you use one of the wavetable modes like standard or bend or mirror or hard sync, that doesn't update the waveform, okay? Good news, there are a lot of great sounding wavetables inside of Massive X. So some of these wavetables are crazy cool sounding, and there's a lot to choose from, probably about 150, 170. Bad news, you can't import your own wavetables. So I know that's going to piss a lot of people off. It bummed me out for sure. I think that's a big mistake on Native Instruments' part. But yeah, you cannot import your own wavetables with this current release. Now for some good news, the first version of Massive X came with 5 wavetable modes. So you know how you could choose that section which said spectrum, bend minus, bend plus minus, and format. Well, we now have 10 of those modes, and each of those modes have their own dedicated set of 2 controls, which we can see right here. And we also have like some sub algorithms or sub modes for those modes. So within, if I load up, say, hard sync, we can change it from hard to soft to grain, and then we can change the direction from neutral up down, right? So it's crazy. Like, to cover all this in a video, this would be a whole video in and of itself, but there are 10 different wavetable modes. So if you think about that, there are about 150, 170 wavetables. Each of these modes will change that sound, right? So we're already up to a multiple of about 1,700 stock wavetable sounds just by loading up each wavetable and then maybe loading up one of these wavetable modes. Now, there are some actually really interesting wavetable modes. So we're kind of done now with the good news, bad news. I think that covers most of it for you guys. So let's actually check some of these out. So the standard mode is going to sound like spectrum, right? Nice, clean sweep. Bend is a combination of bend plus and minus, right? Under that we have mirror. And we can double click any of these controls to get them to their default position. Right, then we have a classic hard sync sound, and for this I'm going to load up a crazier wavetable type. Let's load up Smears. Right, that's on soft. Let's go to hard. And then grain. Right, so you can really change the color, the timbre, the sound of all these wavetables with these wavetable modes. We have wrap. Format is really cool. Let's go to some of the format tables. These were meant to really work wonders with the format mode, obviously. So obviously just the loading up the format mode will actually change how the wavetable position reads out the spectrum of the audio, but you can of course take it even further with the format knob now. So we didn't have any of this in the first version of Massive. Now let's get to ART, which is a pretty interesting one. It's kind of like a resonant filter that's not trying to be a filter. A lot of cool stuff you can do with that. And you can this is a nice little tip here. This no body or body. The body adds in a lot more of the mid, which typically goes away with resonance kind of bandpass style filter. So that's kind of cool. Now next up is the Gorilla. Now Native Instruments was marketing this pretty hard. I asked them like twice about what it is, and they were kind of coy about it. Well, rightfully so, I guess. They're pretty proud about it. But it sounds like to me, it's some type of internal phase modulation or FM. So if we load up Banana, they did tell me that some of the wavetables were really designed to take to the Gorilla, and Banana is one of them. Right, so see how the wavetable position knob doesn't do anything with the Banana, right? So if we load up, let's load up sine, triangle, saw, square. See how the wavetable position does something to that? Well, it doesn't with Banana. So Banana obviously goes with Gorilla. I think that's pretty cute. But now we can really hear what this is going to do to the sound. So we have the bend and the over. We have these different sub modes. We have King, Kang, and Con. 1x, and then we have the different kind of multiples here. 1x, 2x, 3x, 6x. Let's go 6x on Kong. That's just filthy. I'm doing the staying phase over here. So yeah, some type of, I think it sounds like some type of FM, PM thing going on. It's pretty cool. So yeah, there are certain wavetables that are meant to fit with that, and manual doesn't really say what, so I had to get some inside information and ask the guys at NI, and I know that some of the wavetables do. So a good way to test it is if you load it up and that wavetable position doesn't modulate, through the wavetable position, it's gonna be a great candidate for the Gorilla. Now next we have one of my personal favorite modes here, and this is jitter. So check this out, that's pretty cool. Let's load up a basic wavetable here. I love that. All right, so another big change with Massive X is the filter section. We only have one primary filter in Massive X versus the two that we had in Massive, but there's also some new filter modes. Well, a lot of new filter modes, actually. So let's take a look at some of the new filters and talk about how you can interface with the filter section of the synth. All right, so let's do another round of good news, bad news. So good news, you have brand new filters that sound great. They actually sound better than the filters in Massive, in my opinion. And we have a few more variations, right? So we have this Asimov. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. We have Blue Monarch, which is the filter from Monarch, which is great for analog sounds. Now you'll notice that with a lot of these, we actually have another drop-down menu. So Asimov isn't just a whole filter, it's a whole set of filters. We have a bunch of low-pass filters, right? Blue Monarch, we have low-pass, 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 band-pass, peak, high-pass, dual notch, right? So we have way more filter types in Massive X, so that's the good news. All right, now for a little bit of bad news. There's only one filter. I don't know why that is. I mean, that's like some people's biggest gripe with, say, SERUM, is that there's only one main filter. Yes, there's the filter and the effects, but it's different because you don't have really routing options into it, right? So Massive, the first one, had two filters, and you could determine how much of, oscillator A or oscillator 1, 2, or 3 was sent to which filter, and it was great. Can't really do that with Massive X now. So now for a bit of good news. The comb filter is incredible inside of Massive X. So let me load up a bell patch that I made. All right, so this is basically just a modulation oscillator routed into our comb filter. Let's check it out. Right, it's a pretty crazy cool sound. So now for a bit of bad news. There's no scream filter inside of Massive X, which I think is funny because everyone got real excited when SERUM was like, hey guys, here's a scream filter. So there's the creak filter, which is kind of similar. Let me go to we'll go to a quick start. Massive X, There we go. So we do have the creak, which is a bunch of kind of, it has gnarl, noisy, and ewer. I don't know what that word is. I'm not German. Right, so a little bit of format stuff going on there. So kind of like a scream filter in certain parts. But yeah, no scream filter, bad news. But creak, good news, I guess. Creak is kind of cool. So another unpronounceable word, groya, too many vowels. We have low pass, band pass, peak, high pass. Sounds cool. That's all I care about. Don't know how to pronounce it, but sounds nice. Then we have scanner, which is low pass, band pass, low pass. Right, and then we have an SVF filter, right, and so state variable filter, and we have state variable parallel, so you can get a high pass, low pass going on at the same time. Then we have serial. So there are some combinations where you can have parallel and serial setup, but it's not like you can have a parallel serial setup of, say, a comb filter or the creak filter, right? You'd have to do it with more of a basic setup like a low pass, high pass, band pass, that sort of stuff. You'll also notice that with some of these, kind of good news here is that we have an FM control in a lot of the filter modes. The Asimov, the Blue Monarch, growing, let's just call it growing. Scanner. So a lot of good FM possibilities here coming from your filter section. All right, so one of the ways in which I think Massive, the first version, aged poorly is the lack of effects slots, right? We only had 2 effects plus some insert effects for things like distortion and wave shaping. Well, Massive X didn't expand on that a whole lot. We have 3 insert effects and we have 3 stereo effects. And unfortunately, because there's only one filter, if you want to use a second filter, you're going to have to use up one of your insert effects to use a filter, right? And kind of the same thing with with the oscillators. We have 2 oscillators in Massive X versus the 3 that we had in the first version of Massive. There is a virtual analog oscillator that you can load up in the insert effects, but I still would have wished personally that they added a few more effects. But that being said, the effects that are there sound great, especially the stereo effects. The reverb is insane. I've never seen a reverb with this many options and this many algorithms built into a synth. It's nuts. And there's a lot of great sounding ones. So we don't have a lot of effects, I would say, comparatively to a lot of the synths that are coming out nowadays, but we do have high quality effects that have been built from the ground up. So let's check those out right now. All right, so I'm going to keep with that good news, bad news shtick. I think that's a good way for you guys to get a lot of information quickly. So good news, we have more effects. We have 6 different effect slots in Massive X than we did in the first version of Massive, which only had 4. Bad news, that's still not that many effects. So good news is the insert effects now have 3 slots, and we have way more options. We have Anima, which is really cool. It's like a pitch shifting plugin. Right, that's a really neat sound. We also have the things that we had in the first version of Massive, like the bit crusher. We had wave shaping distortion, another distortion unit. But we also, that's where ring mod and sample hold is. But we also have a virtual analog oscillator here, which is kind of cool. So if you want to have, you can use this to create like a sub oscillator. You can use it to create just a third oscillator. It does eat up one of your insert effects, but it is a nice option to have for sure. We also have a phase modulation oscillator, and we have a utility, which we can load up. I already touched on this once in the tutorial, but I'll do it again, where we can load basic high pass and low pass filters. So moving over to the right, we have our stereo effects. Now, the good news is these are pretty much all new algorithms. These aren't like rehashed, and they sound great, and there's a lot of flexibility with them. So the dimensions expander is there, so that's good news. Bad news is your EQ is now a part of your stereo effects. So in the first version of Massive, you had 2 stereo effects and an EQ. So if you want to use EQ, it's basically the exact same setup. So you also have a flanger. You had a flanger in the first one. Nonlinear lab. This is where you have hard clip, soft clip, overdrive, right? You have the distortions. The quad chorus sounds great. Now the reverb, I touched on this a little bit before. The reverb is incredible. So the reverb has all of these different algorithms. All right, so as we can see, we have a ton of different algorithms here in the reverb, right? So just saying we have one reverb is a bit of a misnomer. All right, so let's move to the routing tab. Now, the routing tab in Massive X is really important. The routing tab in Massive, the first one, was not that important. If you want to do simple things like turn oscillators on and off or turn the filter on and off, or, you know, turn the noise oscillator off, you have to go to the routing tab, right? So you do need to get comfortable with the routing tab. I'm going to post a couple videos if you guys want them. Let me know in the comments about how to use the routing tab, but it's pretty simple. I'll cover the basics really quick, probably about 2 or 3 minutes in this video. So let's check that out now. All right, so let's check out the routing tab. Now I've pulled up the init Massive X blank patch, so there's nothing pre-configured. So this will not create sound unless you create a connection. So good news, Massive X is semi-modular. Bad news, Massive X is semi-modular. This is going to be a love-hate thing. I personally like it. I don't mind it, but you know, you guys know I'm a sound designer, right? So for the producers out there who just want to tweak presets, and I love tweaking presets, I'm not hating on that process at all. But for those types of producers out there, this might be a little annoying for you, but so I would suggest spending a few minutes getting used to it so you're comfortable with it. For instance, if you want to just turn off an oscillator, you can't do it up here. You have to go down here and right click on the block to actually turn it off. You could of course turn the volume down, but you know, that's a little bit different. So it's pretty simple. You can set up connections. So right now, if I wanted my oscillator to go to the output, I would just click, drag, and drop. If I want to get rid of the connection, double click. If I want to turn it off, I can right click, right? So this is our filter right here. And the nice thing is if when you load up a filter, it actually, the name shows up there. So if I wanted to have my oscillator go to the creek filter and then to the output of our effects, and we'll load up an effect here. Let's load up the dimension expander. So now we have oscillator going into a creek filter, going into our dimension expander, and then to our output. Right, so it's actually kind of fun once you get going, and you can do some real creative, interesting things with it. And I'll touch on a couple of those right now, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of this video. So, all right, so let's load up this patch I made. It's called Dream Bells. It highlights some cool things you can do with the sub here. So we have these 2 modulation sources for our routing tab that we can apply an envelope to, an LFO to. So I'm actually routing envelope 3 into this mod, which is actually then being routed to my comb filter, and it helped create this really cool, unique bell patch. All right, so a lot of cool things you can do with this routing for sure. All right, so let's check out our modulation sources in a little bit more depth here. So let's start with the performers. Good news, we have 3 performers that I think feel more refined. You can do more interesting things with. You have 2 different views, your basic view and your custom view, and you can really get in there and create some crazy cool shapes with this. And you have a couple different drawing tools, and you have some different time divisions. Bad news, you can't save any of the shapes that you create, which is a little bit tedious if you end up creating a cool shape, but you could always save that preset kind of as like a starting point with that performer. Now, other cool thing is when you go to the second performer or the third performer, you can actually see the first performer's view always, which is really nice. So I'll show you what this does for those of you who aren't massive users. It'll just help change, add variation, fluctuation to your sound over time. All right, so we can take this and draw some different shapes in here, some steps. Right, you get the idea. It'll be great for future bass. It'll be great for evolving paths, those sort of things. Now, over to the right of that, we have our envelopes. We have 3 envelopes, or 3 types of envelopes, I should say. Envelope 1 is always going to be your amp envelope. Envelope 2 is by default going to be a modulation envelope. Then we have the special envelope called an exciter envelope. You can change either of these to be, you know, one of the other types of envelopes, or even an LFO. Now, again, it is a little bit sad that we don't see the actual ADSR curve update with, you know, changes to the knobs, and we can't actually drag the actual waveform, but hopefully they'll address that in an update. I have a feeling they will. Now, moving over to our LFOs, we actually have 2 types of LFOs in Massive X. We have a switcher LFO and a random LFO. The random LFO, as the name suggests, is a randomized LFO where you can control certain elements of it to kind of change and tweak its randomness over time. Now, the switcher LFO is a lot like the LFO in the first version of Massive, but with some really welcomed updates. So I don't have any cons with this one or any bad news. It's all good news with this. So one of the things I always wanted to do with the LFOs inside of Massive, the first version of Massive, was modulate through the different LFO shapes with, say, like an envelope or another LFO. Well, you can actually do that now, which is great. So we can use an envelope, pop it here. We can use an LFO. We can do whatever we want. Now we can also modulate the rate now, even when it's synced. We couldn't do this in the first version of Massive. It'd have to be unsynced. So if I wanted to change from, like, you know, a fast or slow LFO rate, we could. And I love that. All right, guys, that's going to sum up this video. If you have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do it. The support really means a lot to us. If you guys subscribe, definitely hit that notification bell so you guys get an update when we release new content. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.